what's going on between Iran and the United States and Donald Trump trying to he said that he's going to attack Iran and he's going to destroy everything, that he all of a sudden he said that he decided not to attack Iran. And today what's going on is that the United States is somehow, you don't see any sort of negotiations happening, while you look at what Scott Bessent said in the last 2 days, Marco Rubio, Donald Trump himself, he says that we are negotiating. On the part of Iranians, they say nothing of negotiations is happening, but something is happening between Iran and Oman with the case of the Strait of Hormuz, a new mechanism they're defining for the strait. That's real because they're coming to some sort of definition for the Strait of Hormuz, a new mechanism. But when it comes to the United States and Iran, which in my opinion the most important thing of what's going on, how do you see the situation?
Well, I mean, President Trump has been all over the place. He called off military strikes on July 24th, only to resume them, of course, after Iran decided to begin kind of a preemptive attack strategy, was something they hadn't tried before. Previously, Iranian leaders had only, with the exception of March 1st, when they expanded the war to multiple different countries that were hosting U.S. military bases. They really had just kind of matched U.S. escalation at the same level. They hadn't tried to escalate or launch preemptive military strikes. It was always the U.S. they were just responding with retaliatory strikes against U.S. and Israeli missile attacks. And on the 28th, they decided to bomb a U.S. military base in Jordan out of the blue. And granted, there had been no ceasefire agreed to, so it's not like that they were violating any understanding, but it was something that caught President Trump off guard, and he responded, with expletives and saying we're going to bomb the what out of Iran, and then of course so he bombed them for a few days. We had that attack happened on the day that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the White House. So I think Iran was sending a message that any increased strikes by the U.S. and Israel against Iran would be met with, similar retaliatory strikes, and that Iran was no longer afraid of Trump or the U.S. And then it was August 1st. It was just late Saturday night, my time, that Trump decided that he called off the massive strikes on Iran's civilian infrastructure, which would have, potentially turned out the lights for many Iranians and increased massive suffering among tens of millions of the very Iranian civilians which Trump promised to liberate. And so that was a good thing that I commend him for. And then Iran has conducted strikes since then. And Trump has kind of been left embarrassed and humiliated by Iran because he doesn't really have a military solution, of course, to win the war in Iran. There's been a number of articles that I published on my Real War Substack at dpyne.substack.com, both just minutes ago and yesterday, in which I cite a number of incidents reported by the press that, President Trump has had a couple of maybe 2 or 3 meltdowns where he's just raging against his cabinet officials for failing to give him, agree on a strategy or, come up with any ideas on how to win the war.
Yeah. Well, do you think that the issue of the war in Washington is still the case? Because the new reports show, as CNN, there is some sort of fight going on between CNN and Donald Trump, between the mainstream media and Donald Trump and his administration. On one side, they're telling us, Reuters was reporting on the offensive missiles. CNN reported yesterday on 80% of the interceptors being depleted during the war. And these are, if I assume, let's put it, before they said 60%, and right now they came out with 80% because CNN said they have new information coming out, and that's why they're deciding that even 60% is too much, in my opinion, and when you are a superpower and you're trying to consider all these fronts, different fronts, and you try to deplete this war in the West Asia, it wasn't an existential war for Donald Trump to spend that much in the eyes of those people who are arguing this on CNN, for example. And this is too much, but Donald Trump said that doesn't have anything to do with the reality. What is your understanding of the difference between the two sides?
Well, I think President Trump has admitted that it's reality, because he said he'd prosecute the leakers. I mean, what is a leaker? A leaker is someone who leaks truthful intelligence and information to the press that the administration believes is either classified or confidential, or ought not to be shared with the public. So it's not, Trump's not mad. He's not saying it's not true that our missiles are depleted. 65% for Patriots, 80% for THAAD missile interceptors. Almost all of our ATACMS and other Army long-range ballistic missiles have been depleted. All of our JASSM missiles have been depleted. I mean, it's just across the board, just a huge depletion of U.S. Missile capabilities, both defensive and defensive. This is exactly what I warned about back in March when the war began. I said that the U.S. risked losing its conventional military superpower status temporarily if we were to, expend all of our precision strike munitions. We wouldn't be able to fight a war to defend Taiwan, or even, we'd struggle to even defend Europe against a Russian invasion. Not that I believe one is planned, because it's not, but it just shows that the U.S. just wouldn't be able to fight another great power war. And as he mentioned, this is an unnecessary war. This is a war that Trump started because he felt like it. He had a feeling, according to his press secretary, he had a feeling that he could win the war, that he could kind of establish some kind of Venezuela-style regime change, which, of course, in Venezuela, there wasn't any regime change. It was Maduro's, top lieutenant, the vice president that was handpicked, that is the current president of Venezuela, with a communist regime allied with Russia and China. But that was kind of the model that Trump envisioned in his own mind for being able to, have some kind of defeat against Iran. And as I noted in my article that I published this afternoon on the real war, this is really basically Trump's conception of this war was that he could turn it off at any time. That he thought that Iran was kind of a medium power and not a great power, and that he could simply stop bombing them, and that they would be forced to accept whatever peace terms he had in mind. And that has proven the exact opposite. Iran has refused, multiple ceasefires. It wasn't until Trump capitulated to Iran's peace terms on June 14th, and then with the signing ceremony on the 17th of June in Paris, what I call the Treaty of Versailles, because that's where he signed it, in the Palace of Versailles. He basically had a conditional surrender to Iran. But it was one that served, despite the fact that it was Iran's terms that he was accepting. Ending the war really should be the strategic priority, foremost strategic focus of U.S. national security strategy, because this war has proven so deleterious for the U.S. military, the U.S. economy. Our economic security has been weakened, our alliances have been weakened, our enemy alliances have been strengthened. Basically, everything that folks like me and others, national security strategists, warned about is exactly what's happened so far. I mean, the only thing that hasn't happened yet is a sunken aircraft carrier or a U.S. global depression.
Yeah, today I talked with Michael Hudson and Richard Wolff. They both agreed that the global depression is coming, is unavoidable with what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz, with the Red Sea, with the bubble mandab all coming together. And the point is, David, how long, in your opinion, does Donald Trump want to continue this sort of tit for tat war? And nobody knows what is going on. What is the immediate objective on the part of his administration? What is that? Do you see something of objective coming out, or they're mentioning at least what is that?
Well, it's funny if you listen to Fox News, as I often do. Just last week, they said that the White House objective with these massive bombing strikes would essentially be to bring Iran back to the peace table. So we can't even get Iran to, while Trump is claiming that Iran's Islamist regime is begging for peace. In fact, it's Trump that's begging for peace. That's begging for Iran to come back to the negotiating table. and Iran is basically refusing. They're saying that, basically there's a list of things we need to do, including, dropping all economic sanctions, freeing up Iran's frozen access, stop ending the blockade. Those are pretty much the three things that Iran has said that they want us to do before they come out and agree to a ceasefire. So basically, what I've been hearing is that President Trump is behind the scenes. He's pushing for Iran to re-agree to the very 60-day ceasefire MOU that he threw in the trash on July 7th. Basically, when he did that, I mean, it threw all of the diplomatic progress that he'd worked so hard to accomplish, as he has been desperate to get us out of this war with some kind of peace with honor type agreement, as Nixon negotiated to end the Vietnam War. He threw that down the toilet. So he's having to start from scratch. But ultimately, any peace deal is going to have to pretty much reflect those same Iranian terms that we agreed to before. And the problem is that Iran no longer trusts President Trump's signature to mean anything, because he's been so back and forth and obviously so duplicitous, from the very beginning with his murders of Iran's first family on day one of the war.
He said that CNN reported today that these leaks, as he mentioned, and 80% of interceptors being depleted, or the Reuters reporting on ATACMS and the other sort of missiles. And he said these leaks are weakening his position in negotiating with Iran, but there is no negotiation. This is amazing. He's coming out.
Yeah, I mean, this whole war, Rubio kind of let the cat out of the bag when he said, our objective is basically to return the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf to the status quo ante. So basically, we destroyed the status quo, which was free commerce through the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran immediately took it over just within a couple days of the war, of us starting the war against them. And we can't even get back to that. I mean, that world that we had, which was very favorable to U.S. national security interests, is never coming back. There's nothing we can do short of dropping atomic bombs on Iran. Of course, if we did that, then it would also greatly disrupt the U.S. economy. And I pretty much can guarantee that Trump's not that genocidal, despite the fact as I wrote in my article today, he's threatened to do that 3 or 4 times, to nuke Iran and kill tens of millions of innocent Iranian civilians who didn't want this war, didn't ask for this war, and are suffering greatly from the U.S. military bombing and blockade campaigns. So, Trump is really, he's been his own worst enemy. I mean, this has had a tremendous effect on his political popularity, and also, of course, the Republican Party, of which I'm still a member. In the hopes, I'm staying in the Republican Party in the hopes that J.D. Vance will be our next president or presidential nominee to kind of, overturn all the mess that President Trump has done by, Biden essentially started the fire with the war in Ukraine, and oversaw the war in Gaza and supporting Israel. But it's really been, Trump has really poured gasoline on the flames instead of ending the wars like he promised to do during the 2024 presidential campaign.
How do you see Saudi Arabia and the ongoing conflict vis-a-vis their foreign policy? Because they started a war with Yemen, which wasn't there. Again, the same thing that the United States started against Iran, Saudi Arabia in some scale is so similar, because Saudi Arabia, Yemen didn't want to do anything against them. Despite having that siege for such a long time on Yemen, putting a lot of pressure on Yemen, they didn't come out and hit in Saudi Arabia before Saudi Arabia attacking them. They attacked them, international airport. The runway of Sana'a International Airport was attacked and was hit. Then they responded. And right now you see they have a new blockade on Saudi Arabia, and they're putting a lot of tremendous pressure on their economy. Then you see Saudi Arabia, instead of, backing down, negotiating, or somehow trying to resolve the issue, they're, somehow doubling down on Iraq and the Iraqi government, and some part of the Iraqi army was attacked later on after. And so, David, it's what is amazing to me that the war, instead of the intensity of the war, has been reduced between Iran and the United States, but the war is expanding in the region. is somehow is going in each and every country. There is no single country in that region that is not part of the war.
Yeah, that's
What
very
is your
true.
perception on that?
Well, I think you're right. I think President Trump likely encouraged the Saudis to, obviously the army of resistance in Yemen that controls like 70% of its territory, but only 15% of its population. That's obviously not the government. I mean, the government is the one that controls the most people, not the most territory. And so, when I refer to the Houthis, I oftentimes refer to them as the Yemenis government as well. But yeah, it was clearly the Saudis that kind of tried to respark that war to establish kind of a second front in the hopes of pressuring the Yemeni government from ending its blockade over the strait there in the Red Sea, Bab el Mandab Strait. And it kind of backfired on them, obviously, because the Yemenis have lots of ballistic missiles, lots of supersonic anti-ship missiles, so they have a lot of Iranian missiles that can cause great damage to the world's economy and target obviously Saudi civilian infrastructure as well. Yeah, but the interesting thing about the Saudis is reportedly the main reason that Trump so-called tacoed out. Trump always chickens out is what the TACO acronym means, is that the Saudis. Saudi Crown Prince basically called him and actually went to see Washington, D.C. to meet directly in person with Vice President J.D. Vance, and said that if Trump were to launch those bombing strikes against Iran's civilian infrastructure, and Iran were to respond in kind against Saudi Arabia and destroy their energy infrastructure, then Saudi Arabia would immediately dump all U.S. dollars and kind of send the U.S. In the direction of an economic recession. So Trump chickened out on that basis, and for other reasons as well. Obviously, the critical munitions shortage was a big reason as well. Also, crude oil prices went above $100 right around that time, the beginning of the month.
How you mentioned the situation with the economy together with the ammunition, interceptors, all these stockpile. Which is, do you think the combination of both would somehow put pressure on Donald Trump sufficiently to somehow find a political solution for what's going on?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, Trump has been trying to find a political solution. I think I heard that on the first night of the war, when he heard that the USS Abraham Lincoln, our only aircraft carrier in the region at the time, on the first night of the war, came under Iranian anti-ship missile strikes with 4 subsonic cruise missiles, that he contacted Iranian leaders and asked for a ceasefire, and he never got one. He didn't get a ceasefire until April 7th. It wasn't until around April 4th or 5th, I think it was the 5th, that Iran finally gave their 14-point peace plan or 10-point peace plan at the time that Trump essentially agreed to. In substantial part, on April 7th with his initial ceasefire, and so he's been trying to get the U.S. out of the war, realizing it was a mistake. He bit off more than he can chew. But the problem is he is obsessed with what I call the image or the illusion of victory. So he wants to be able to spin whatever agreement is signed as a victory. He actually did that with the 60-day ceasefire MOU that he signed on June 17th in Paris. While he was signing it, everyone clapped, but he didn't smile. That's really a characteristic of him. Normally, if he thinks that he's accomplished something major, then he'll kind of wave the agreement around and smile. And he didn't do that because he knew that he was signing up to terms that were humiliating for the U.S. side. So that's really kind of the irony, is that Trump really does in his heart, he wants peace. He wants to end the war, but he can't figure out how to do it and still look good, and create the illusion that the U.S. actually accomplished something, because the U.S. Really has not accomplished anything positive for U.S. national security. It's actually, made Iran even stronger at the strategic level.
I think the war can get somehow more dangerous if Zelensky and Israel coming together and maybe merging the two wars. Do you see that possibility?
Yeah, I don't really see that possibility. I know that obviously some neocons are trying to conflate the two wars and say this is one global, two different fronts of the same global conflict, presenting Russia and Iran as identical. I mean, yes, it's true they're strong military allies, but obviously the origins of the war in Ukraine were very different from the origins of the war in Iran. And the origins of the war in Ukraine, as we've discussed in prior interviews on your show, originated with NATO imperialism, essentially NATO expanding into Russia's security space in Ukraine. That's always been part of Russia's sphere of influence. Obviously, it's part of the Soviet Union, but certainly since the fall of the Soviet Union was really the most integral part of the country of the Russian security sphere. And we thought we'd get away with that. And we made Ukraine a de facto NATO member state. But in the case of Iran, this was just a war that was, fought basically, as I mentioned, Trump had a feeling that we could kick their butts, essentially. We could beat down Iran, that they wouldn't fight back. They wouldn't close the Strait of Hormuz. They wouldn't escalate the war to a regional conflict. All of his assumptions, have been proven wrong. But essentially, there was no cause or pretext. It was fought on false pretext. He said February 14th, just 2 weeks before he started the war, he said that Iran's nuclear program remained obliterated. And yet March 4th or 5th, he said just 4 days after he started the war, he said that we had to bomb Iran to destroy their nuclear program all over again. So, we know that Iran's nuclear program has really not been affected at all by the war, not even really by Operation Midnight Hammer. Essentially, it's up and running. They can, if according to Ted Postal, they still retain the capability to build nuclear warheads in their underground, missile and nuclear facilities. So that was a complete false pretense. Iran's government they're not crazy. They're not suicidal. Even if as is likely, they have a nuclear arsenal, they're not going to use it because they know we'd nuke them back a million times over.